This is the Effing One Podcast, Australia's only Formula One podcast with Adam and Luke.
G'day and welcome to the Effing One Podcast, Australia's premier Formula One podcast that not only brings the reality goggles into the world, but also brings you a tight and tidy wrap-up of all things Formula One. This podcast is held in high esteem amongst the tiny nation of Romania. In fact, Romania's most well-known athlete, Nadia Comaneci, gave this podcast the perfect 10 out of 10 and has advised that she has sent her 76 Olympic gold just for me. Thank you, Nadia. And in response, I will send a replica Speckled Jim Award medal. It makes up for it. Sure, our mascot Speckled Jim was beaten 126 times out of 127 in the cockfighting arena, but after his tragic death, he was a 10 out of 10. Finger-licking good. Thank you, Nadia, and thank you to all the Effing One podcast listeners around the world who sacrificed their time to listen to my nonsense every Grand Prix weekend. Now we have some new countries tuning in, some by accident. We've got some Irish listeners, some Indian listeners. Tell you what, India, you need to spread the news. There's a whole lot of you. If you all get on board, this could be quite interesting. South Africa, Canada, Colombia, Qatar, and Turkey chiming in for the first times as well. Congratulations, you're all aboard this shit show. Well, it's that time. Go and grab your favourite sensual massage oils. Take those trousers down to the ankles. Pop a towel down because it's going to get messy. Sit back, relax, and shut the hell up as we delve headfirst, pants down, into this week's Formula One podcast. And straight off the top, we have a charity on the podcast called Hand Jobs for the Homeless, and we've received some complaints from some of the homeless shelters that some of the volunteers have been leaving early and haven't been fulfilling their duties, leaving vagrant, housing challenged, roofless, dwelling disordered people with blue balls. Finish the line. Sure, they keep getting back in line, but get it done properly and they won't have the energy to come back in line, or come up with some kind of cum stamp. One load per day, get them motivated, get them off, and give them a release that society ignores. Do your job. Go down to a homeless shelter and give some hand jobs for the homeless. Our pioneering charity here on the Effing One podcast. And it's a good time to remember the vomit-free guarantee. If anything that I say induces your unfortunate release of your bodily functions out of your stomach, unless you are deep-throating a Swedish cock, you guys know what I'm talking about, I will come around personally and clean up after you. It may take a while to get there, but if you stay in that, vomit-covered clothing, if you vomit on the floor, just leave it there. Let me know. Send me a photo. I'll jump on a plane and clean you up. That is our vomit-free guarantee. If anything you hear on this podcast gives you a bit of reflux that follows through, then I'll come around and clean it up. Now, we've got some talking points from the Austrian Grand Prix. The sprint, it wasn't that great. I'm all for more racing of a weekend, and it's good to have a little bit, but it's such a short track. It's such a short race. It was over so quickly. Some good stuff at the back. Mercedes seemed to have closed the gap again, but not too much. I think Hamilton was 41 seconds behind the front two, so nothing really that close. But you can't gauge a performance off a track that has barely 10 corners. Corner 2, and I think it's corner 5, it's barely a fucking corner at all. So quali will always be close when there's a 1 minute 4 second lap. Everyone's on the limit. It's only when you get longer laps do you see bigger gaps in the times. So there is planned upgrades. I think everyone's bringing a lot of upgrades to the French Grand Prix. And I think George Russell has said that they're very confident going into this weekend. So we'll see. Who knows? But it's also interesting, there was only 5 left on the lead lap. There's 20 cars that start a race, and only 5 of them ended up on the lead lap. And the last one of that was Esteban Ocon. Well done, Esteban. Leclerc driving at the end of the race, braking with 20% on throttle. Now, I don't know if you've ever gone into a corner, go into, I don't know, don't be stupid, but try it. Keep your foot on the throttle a little bit as you go braking into a corner and just see what kind of impact that has. I wouldn't recommend it. And driving a Formula 1 car at 10 tenths towards the end of a race when you've got a world champion hunting you down, it'd be quite a bit of a challenge. I'm very interested to how did he pull the clutch in at all, which would be on the steering wheel? Did he try and lift the throttle pedal up with his right foot as he brakes with his left? Does he try and, there's not a lot of room in that footwell, but can he get his foot under to try and lift it up? Was it stuck down? Was it fully back up, but it was just staying at 20%? We don't know. He hasn't really talked about it much. They were kind of hushing about it, but I'd be very interested in his driving technique and how he got around and finished the race. I suppose you can lift and coast a little bit more going into corners, but that leaves Mad Max to come in from behind. But he kept him at bay to win the race. And Russell tried his best. I don't know if anyone heard that on the radio, but Russell said that he tried his best in taking Sergio Perez out. Sergio tried to make a move, and George basically dispatched of him and got rid of him. But he did a great job, Russell, getting rid of Sergio. Of course, he got a penalty for it, and rightly so. But yeah. News coming up. It's Hamilton's 300th Grand Prix this weekend, and he will miss free practice 1 and hand the car over to Nick de Vries. And to celebrate, Sebastian Vettel will penetrate him under a rainbow flag with our FIA president Ben Sulayem, same thing, chained to a chair and forced to watch these two in the art of making gay love. He will be made to watch that. And it will be the only meet Lewis has consumed for quite some time. Sebastian has told me he's looking forward to it. My favourite Lewis Hamilton of his 300 races so far is the 2007 Chinese race. Now, if any of you know or you don't know, I'll give you a brief recap. Lewis Hamilton's in the hunt for the World Championship. He goes into pit lane. He overcooks at brakes and crashes into a wall close to pit entry. That lack of a result, ended up by the end of the season, he was 1 point behind Kimi Räikkönen, who went to win the 2007 World Championship. Lewis was forced to wait another year before he won his first. But for me, that's one of his personal highlights when Lewis crashed into the wall there on the 2007 race. The douchiest moment was the 2018 German Grand Prix, giving us his douche the Redeemer pose on a rain-soaked Hockenheim podium. But to arguably a legend of the sport, his first title in 2008 and his last lap pass in the rain on a flailing dry-tired Timo Glock in the Panasonic Toyota Formula 1 car, that for me will be his greatest moment in the sport, to get the championship right at the end on the last lap of the last race in the season. Poor Felipe Massa went over. He won the race, did everything he needed to be. And when Massa had passed that finish line and took the race win at that time, he was world champion. Because Lewis was behind Timo Glock, he wasn't in the position to get the point that was needed to get him ahead of Felipe Massa, but with 2 corners to go, he overtook Timo and got the job done to win his first title in 2008. The Brazilian fans, the Brazilian crowd, the Brazilian driver was very, very sad in Sao Paulo. And Lewis went on to win his first of 7 world titles. Lewis is a great driver. He's one hell of a douche canoe. We all know that, but you still got to give it up that this man can drive a Formula One car very fast. Both McLaren drivers are afraid of finding the peak of their McLaren. Norris says he understands some of Ricciardo's struggles as they hold each other at night and they tell each other that everything will be okay and we're still safe and we're still around. So it seems to be that McLaren is on a fine edge, and both these drivers are trying to find that edge, and Norris still has that edge over the personality Ricciardo. Brian Herta's son, Colton, that man had a Formula One test. He did a test after the Austrian Grand Prix. He went to Portugal and did a few laps around there. I think he did a 2-day test there. He was happy. Team looks like they were happy. Zach Brown said, we only test people we're serious in. He gave a test to Pat O'Ward a season ago or a season or two ago, who is also McLaren IndyCar driver. There's a lot of rumours about McLaren, about who they're going to have in their stables in IndyCar next year. And they're saying, could this carry on? Could Alex Palou leave his team at Chip Ganassi and go to them? And are they trying to find the next guy to step into McLaren on Daniel Ricciardo or Lando Norris departure, which I don't think is going to happen for Lando, but it might happen with Daniel after the end of next year. Daniel has reconfirmed and recommitted. There was a lot of rumours and speculations that he won't be driving for McLaren next year. But he has committed himself. He said, no, I'm not going anywhere. So here I am. Vettel, a lot of rumours about him, Aston Martin, and they're pretty sure that he's going to stay on after this year. It'd be sad to see Sebastian go, but I hope he stays. He's driving very well, and he's still got a lot to offer the sport. And Honda may come back to Formula 1 going by the 2026 rules. If they're happy with the way that the engine rule is going, they might come in with a whole bunch of other engine suppliers. But Honda's, can you really rely on them? No. Next up is the idea that can make Formula 1 great again. Now, the podcast, the F1 podcast, is all about making Formula 1 great again. And I come up with an idea on every podcast. Some of them are stupid. Some of them have been used, and with no credit to this podcast. They're going to be getting rid of tyre warmers. Who mentioned that? The podcast. This very, very podcast. Who mentioned about ground effects cars coming into Formula 1 to increase overtaking and reduce the need for winged downforce? Who was that? This very podcast, that's right. And my next idea, you might think it's silly. It may not change racing, but I think it will. And I think it will change it for the better for the people at home watching, for us, for all of us. Now, if you go online, you'll find Craig Scarborough, a very in-the-know, talented, genius engineer who is very got his head to the ground, his nose to everything that's Formula 1. Anything that's changed on a car, he will pick it up, he will point it out, and he will tell you why they've done it. Now, he did a little video on tyre pressure sensors, which are Formula 1, put it inside the wheel themselves, and also the teams do it as well. I would like to add a tyre pressure sensor to the driver's seats. Now, this will monitor the driver's bullocks or scrotal temperature, moisture and humidity, but more interesting, you'll be able to monitor a driver's flatulence or fart levels. Now, this will be integrated with driver telemetry, and also we'll look at implementing a fart-to-pass turbo or electric energy boost. In IndyCar, they have a push-to-pass, and in Formula E, they've got a fan boost, or you go at a certain part of the track that will give you an extra bit of juice to overtake. Will give you a fast lap or whatever the fuck they call it. This is a fart to pass. So if you're sitting in your car, you let go a bit of a gas, the car picks up and goes, wait a minute, bit of a fart's been released there. Then you get a bit of an extra boost. I think that's a great idea. But if you follow through with your fart and a little solid comes out, a little bit of poo, a little bit of scat, you'll be given a brown flag, and your roll hoop, which is just above the driver's head, will illuminate brown, so everyone knows trackside that you soiled your backside. And speaking of rings, the Red Bull ring, race rating 8.5 out of 10 for me. I think there was a lot of good stuff. There was a lot of side-by-side. There was 5 cars racing each other at one point. Very exciting. Heaps of things going on. It's 71 laps. It's a very short Grand Prix, but there was heaps of overtaking. Good racing, some clean racing, some stupid racing, and they also had the sprint race as well. Leclerc got the win ahead of Max Verstappen, who was about 1.5 seconds behind. And as I said before, Hamilton was 41 seconds away from that. We all know what happened with the drivers. I'm not going to go through. I'm not going to bore you with each driver and what they did. Basically, some drivers were good. Some drivers were shit. There was a lot of drivers that just didn't do very well at all. Let's give some dishonourable mentions to some of our Formula One brethren drivers. You've got Perez, Latifi, Sainz. Didn't finish. Sainz went up in flames. Latifi is just generally shit. He was struggling with the car. He doesn't have an upgrade that Albon has had for the last 2 Grand Prix. Do I think it's fair that Latifi didn't get the upgrade? Yes, I do. Would you rather give it to your best driver or to the other bloke? Exactly. Vettel, disappointing. Had a bit of an altercation with Albon. Albon, I think he hit 2 blokes in that race. And some of these drivers just don't seem to learn. Gasly, his incident, he qualified well, but then had that, he just came across straight in front of Hamilton. I don't know what people are thinking nowadays. The funny thing is, Hamilton then went on and complained. He was like, I don't know what these guys are doing. You know, when Gasly came across and hit him, it spun, got Gasly a little bit airborne, not like Zhou airborne, but it got Gasly a little bit airborne. And then Perez was trying to overtake him, and Lewis just kind of drifted to the right-hand side and put a little bit of Perez on the grass. It's very interesting. He's like, these guys can't seem to drive straight or can't see. And then he goes ahead and does that. The very next fucking corner, Perez got ahead, stuck it down the inside, nearly made contact with Lewis, but he's like, no, you're not going to put me on the grass. Fuck you. Because, if you do try and put someone on the grass, they will probably overtake you. Some of them will overtake you while waving their finger, like Fernando Alonso. Zhou did a very decent job over the weekend. He did was lacking in some of the pace he's had recently, but he finished 14th. Gasly, Tsunoda 15th, 16th, Vettel 17th. Stroll, Albon, Bottas out of the points. Alonso got into the points. Yeah, so Fernando had what looked to be a tyre that hadn't been put on properly. He had severe vibrations when he exited the pit lane he was just behind what would have been Lando Norris when he came out, and he had this vibration. So he pitted 2 times in 2 laps, and then unfortunately put him back down to 10th. Again, another thing that Alpine seems to be, I don't know, he really has the pace. He's driving strong. He wouldn't have been up to Ocon this weekend in that particular race, going from what happened in the sprint race, but I do think Fernando could have been 6th position or around the Lando Norris finish, around Mick Schumacher, Lando Norris. So it's such a shame for the Fonz. He's driving very well, but these little things that just keep screwing him up. He was very, very quiet on the team radio after the race, very disappointed, but hopefully he gets what he deserves after some really, really strong showings. Ricciardo, Magnussen, Norris, Mick Schumacher finishing 6th. Great job by Mick. He drove really, really well. Then you've got Ocon 5th, Russell 4th, and then you've got the podium, Hamilton, Verstappen, and Leclerc. The fastest lap was Max Verstappen with a 1:07.275. The fastest pit stop was McLaren with a 2.25 second pit stop. And Mick Schumacher got driver of the day in celebration of his own father, not for him. But yeah, that was the race results. We're going to have a look at the awards. the F1 Podcast Awards, the greatest awards in Formula One. The Green Award for saving the environment, for finishing a race early and thinking that, you can do your part when you just think F1 is just about polluting the world and polluting the earth and blah, 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 all those hippy-dippy motherfuckers. The Green Award. So the one driver who really thought, if I end my race now, I could get a Green Award. And Sergio Perez, congratulations, Sergio. You win the Green Award for saving the environment, for being eco-friendly and ending your race earlier to save all that fuel. The Lickett Senate Award for the best overtaking manoeuvre. There was a lot of really decent overtaking manoeuvres this weekend. There's some humdinger battles out there, but Alonso on Sebastian Vettel between turns 6 and 7 was my favourite overtake, and just proves you can go side by side with experienced drivers and not make contact. George Russell, Alexander Albon, Pierre fucking Gasly. You can go side by side. You look at Leclerc and Hamilton at the British Grand Prix side by side. You can do that. You can do that in high-speed corners, and you're not going to hit anyone. Think about it. Pastor Maldonado Award. That leads me to these fuckwits. Pastor Maldonado Award for dangerous driving goes to Alexander Albon and Pierre Gasly. Now, you'd think that they'd learnt their lesson. We all saw Gasly try to go for a gap, which was closed by George. George then hit Zhou. Zhou went airborne. Blah, blah, blah. We know what happened there. So you think Gasly wouldn't sort of just drift across and try and close the door in front of Hamilton, but he did. And he got a little bit airborne and he went wide and went back to last place. Congratulations, Gasly. You get one of the awards. And Albon, the man who at this very track could have got his first podium when he was driving for Red Bull. Alex. You hit two blokes. You took them out. You did the exact same thing Lewis Hamilton did to you. Just don't be a dickhead. Someone's around the outside. You may not be on the preferred line. You probably don't have as much grip as you normally would, so you can't go into that corner just as fast. Sure, you might lose a place, but that's okay. You're not making contact. Remember, just because Lewis Hamilton did it to you doesn't mean you have to do it to everyone else. I'm happy with you fighting, but you can tell by these guys, like the Sebastian Vettels, like the Fernando Alonsos, you can go side by side around corners and not fucking crash into each other. So just chill, Alex. Chill. You don't have to get everyone back for what Lewis did to you. And I will give you. You can take Lewis out of one race, by all means. Do it. He did it to you. You can do it to him. Fair's fair, but don't just take it out on anyone. And don't bitch and complain if you just go, remember what you did? Yeah, that was you, dickhead. The F1 Podcast Award for making Formula 1 great again. The old guard. I just spoke about him. I'll speak about him again. Alonso and Vettel, side by side, good racing, good overtaking, back and forth, fighting, clean, respectful, giving each other room. Unlike Tsunoda did to Alonso as he waved his finger past when he put him on the grass. The old guard can race properly, side by side, no contact, respect given and space given. It happens in all the racing categories. When someone doesn't respect someone or they're just a little bit pissed off, they won't give them racing room. You understeered into them. Yeah, well, the thing about understeer is you can control that. Yeah, you can. By not going as fast into a corner. That's how you control understeer. If you're not on the racing line, it's probably going to be a little bit more slippery. But you can control understeer. It's like going down a main straight and just turning really hard. You may not turn really, really fast. You may turn a little bit, but you'll probably have understeer, like in the wet. When you drive in the wet, you don't drive to dry ways. You drive to the conditions. You drive to the wet. And if you're off track, if you're a little bit on the inside, which probably doesn't have enough rubber, you might understeer. So just be prepared to be understeery. You professional racing drivers, you'd fucking know this by now. And the Yuji Ide Award for wasting everyone's time. And there's no one in Formula One who wastes time quite like Nicholas Latifi. And he's back to his best. He was back in the car. There was no Terry in the car this weekend. It was Latifi. And he was back to his shitting best. Congratulations. Yes, that's the Your Shit Award. And we're giving that to Ferrari. And the reason why Ferrari? Why Ferrari, you say? You know, they won the race. But basically, Ferrari can't handle two cars. One's unreliable, or they screw them with pit stops and like, we can only do one. Maybe you should just give up on two fucking cars and go with one. Put Nikita Mazepin in the second car and just forget about it. You can't do two cars. You have all those people there, and you can't do two cars. You can only do one. The other car fucking goes up in flames. And maybe F1 should have a handbrake. I don't think it's a great idea to make Formula 1 great again. I just think it's a bit of a safety thing. Have a handbrake. Have like a little, you push the brake down, you press a button, it's locked in, it ain't going anywhere. So when Carlos Sainz is trying to get over, and Carlos, if your car's on fire and you're rolling downhill, jump out and leave it the fuck alone. Don't be trying to step on the pedal just to save. No, you've got flames licking the back of your fucking helmet. Get out of the car. I think just get out. Stop, drop and roll. Get off the fucking car. And also, another thing, if you went around that corner, you went straight to there and you go up that hill, there's only one way you were going. We had a fire marshal run up halfway, pull the pin, and then ran away. What the fuck was that about? Austrian pussy? Go and put the fucking fire out, or take your overalls off and go home. You're not there to watch a race, you're there to put fucking fires out. And the one fire that does happen, you pull the pin and then you fuck off. Pull the pin, aim, squeeze and sweep. That's how you put a fire out. But if Carlos had just gone around the inside of that corner, went onto the grass around the inside as the hill goes down, around that corner, around turn 4, there's a marshal post on the right hand side. I think that would have been a wiser option. As soon as I saw it go up, I'm like, go to your right. Then once he went up the hill, I'm like, you're not going to stay there, champ. I talked about the fast lap and all that jazz. The tips and the turd competition. Now, the tips for our F1 podcast listeners. If you want to get on board, head out the pinned tweet on Twitter, the F1 podcast Twitter. Check us out there. I don't tweet much, but the pinned tweet will take you to the tipping competition. You've got a qualifying link and you've got a race link. You tip your driver who you think is going to come out ahead. The top tipper this week was Cliff. You did a phenomenal job. In qualifying, you got 9 out of 10. And then he got 16 out of 20. Myself on 15. Pat 14. Jim, Pete and T all on 12. But Pat is still in the lead with 148. I'm on 147. Cliff, big comeback there with a 143. Jim, 144. He's in third. Then you've got T on 135. And producer Pete, the man on the dials who's listening to this right now and just fixing my levels when I get a little bit too hot. He's on 131. Not a great start for Pete. And the third championship, the only championship that really matters, is Junior Schumacher has just been overtaken by Nicholas Latifi. Latifi's on 99 negative points. Then you've got Junior Schumacher on negative 92. The Great Wall of China, he is on 84. That is your podium of the third championship. And this Tijuana Tussler has jumped up. He's in tied with Suck My Balls Magnussen and Minifon's Carlos Sainz. Gasman is up there as well. Well, it's all to play for up there. TIE Fighter, Swery, Sonoda, all in the low 70s with Gasman. Ooh, it's getting tight and tussler there. Good stuff. Next race, French Grand Prix. French, the Circuit de Paul Ricard in Le Castellet, I think the area is called. The circuit length is 5.842 kilometres. It is the most confusing track you can put your eyes on. Blue lines, red lines, there's just lines everywhere. They've got so many options of different track layouts. It basically was a high-tech test track. It used to be a set circuit, and then Bernie Eccleston brought it over, and he tried to update it and fucking do all this fancy. So it was a test track, and now it's into a Grand Prix circuit again. The grandstand's about half a mile away to watch the race, and I hear that the traffic to get in and out of that is horrendous. Take the race back to Manicourt, please. 5.842 kilometre track, 53 laps. The first Grand Prix was 1971. The race distance is 309.69 kilometres, 69. The lap record is Sebastian Vettel with a 1 minute 32.740 in 2019. The tyres for this weekend is a C2, C3, C4, the three middle compounds, and I know this is the reason you all tune in. Interesting, some camber limit changes. Front 3.25 negative degrees and rear 2.0 degrees. They can't go over that camber limit. Now the front PSI, the minimum starting pressure is 24.0 PSI. The rear is 21.5 PSI, subject to change after free practice 2. If all the teams go, we need more, we need less, let's change it round. The weather's looking warm. Friday 18 to 33, it's a scorcher. Saturday 2 clouds by the looks of this little graphic, 21 to 32, and Sunday 21 to 33, another warm day. Sunday, Friday, where they should be able to get a lot of data on those types of temperatures. The race times for those of you watching the French Grand Prix in Auckland, New Zealand, it's 1 a.m. Monday morning. Nerang and Sydney, you'll be watching at 11 p.m. Adelaide, Australia, 10:30 p.m. Sunday night, with Perth, the west coast of Australia, is 9 p.m. Kathmandu, Nepal. If you're summiting, I think you should probably get off the mountain around this time. At 6:45 p.m. Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Ooh, my mouth was all over the place. 5 p.m. Sunday. Helsinki, Finland, 4 p.m. Stockholm, Sweden, 3 p.m. London, England, 2 p.m. Sao Paulo, Brazil, 10 a.m. Sunday morning. New York, USA, 9 a.m. Los Angeles, 6 a.m. And if you're in Hawaii, you've got a 3 a.m. Sunday morning start. The previous poll was Max Verstappen with a 1 minute 29.990. He was up by about 3/10. The race went to Verstappen and Hamilton and Perez. Verstappen also got the fastest lap. The local food, I'm going to be eating heaps of fromage. I won't be partaking in wine. I'll be partaking in some Evian water. Or if you realise that Evian spelled backwards is naive, so if you're spending that much money for fucking bottled water, you're naive. Heaps of little delicacies, some escargots, some snails, beautiful, lovely. Enjoy the French Grand Prix. My mum says hi to everyone listening. Adam, if you're listening, get back on this motherfucking podcast so we can have some fun. Hope you're all well. Talk to you soon, and bye for now. Cheers, cunts.